jump all around, jump all around. Move that body, dance with the vibes get loose. Now hit the floor direct to the roof. Flick to the script, flick that to the script. I get right down legit. Work that body, make sure you don't hurt nobody.
So this is going to be a very different podcast than what we're usually accustomed to doing. At least for first, for those of you that are watching, we're going to get into the sort of, goofier, sillier side of things first. But, I just think it would be irresponsible to at least not address and talk about the things that are going on, not only just around the world, but right in our own backyards, right in our neighborhoods, in the cities and stuff around us. Especially when it comes to, the Black Lives Matter protests that are happening right now. It's disgusting that it's even gotten to this point. I think I can kind of speak for all of us here right now, because it hasn't really seemed like, in terms of race relations with, an institutional racism, at least here in the States, that nothing's really changed in the past 30 or so odd years since the Rodney King riots in LA. And now, of course, everyone knows it. There's these huge waves of protests that are happening across the country and now even across the world, in order to bring awareness and to stop institutional racism. But of course, all of this this powder keg just erupted because of the deaths of 3 individuals: George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and I feel terrible. I can't remember this.
Are you going for Breonna Taylor?
Yes, thank you, Breonna Taylor.
Yeah.
I feel terrible because that happened right here in Louisville, and I live here in Louisville, and it's been surreal. Just hearing the things and keeping track of social media and seeing all these protests and happen in streets that I've been down, that I've walked down. And do you guys know of what specifically happened to Breonna Taylor?
Yeah, I don't believe I know. No,
I do know. I'm 95% sure I know what happened with that.
Okay, so with Breonna Taylor, she was an EMT, and she was living with her boyfriend. And apparently, I didn't know this. I don't know if this is a Kentucky only thing or if this is somehow nationwide. But apparently, at least here, the cops have the right to enter your home without a warrant. And they went to the wrong house. They entered in, Breonna Taylor's home without announcing themselves or anything. And they immediately opened fire. They fired 22 shots, killing Breonna Taylor. And her boyfriend, in self-defense and trying to protect her, fired a shot from his own registered firearm. And even still, to this date, the only person charged in that entire incident was the boyfriend.
It's garbage.
It's insulting. I don't know how people can live with themselves, saying, well, the cops are just doing their job. They're just following orders. I don't know how you can take a look at a story like that and not at least have some sort of empathy in you.
And especially because so many other jobs that when lives are on the line and you make that critical mistake, you're gone. And that just doesn't happen with police.
It's just such an obvious double standard that
It is
impossible to refute.
Because, like, a doctor makes a mistake, like malpractice, something like that, they're gone. They're out. That happens for the cop, and there's nothing even close to a similar level of accountability for another job that regularly has the lives of people that they're working with in their hands.
Yeah, and I'm sure you guys also saw passing around on the internet a while ago the breakdown of the hours in training it takes to become a policeman, and how like almost 100 of those hours are how to use a firearm, and like 8 of those hours are conflict management. And then like it's basically just kind of like student teaching. Most of your training is like just on the job. So like and they like pair you with a cop, but if you're paired with a racist cop or someone who is bad with conflict dismanagement, then like that will just further like, you know, put you into that system. So then it's just kind of like there's no way to break that system at that point. It's just it runs the whole way through. If it doesn't even like they don't make any effort to stop it at the root.
Exactly. And I'm glad you brought up that whole police training thing, because I feel like it just, because you're right, they'd spend a whole lot of time talking about or teaching them how to use a firearm, but nothing like how to resolve the situation. And I feel like that just further drives home that sort of almost like a military-esque soldier mentality that we've seen in police forces across the country, across the world, where it's basically, it's you against them. You're not there to protect people. You're basically there to protect yourself and your fellow officers. And this has been happening for decades at this point, but the increased militarization of the police force, just, you know, handing them like these crazy, I'm not going to pretend like I'm a weapons expert or anything, but I don't think police should have access to the same types of weapons that soldiers do overseas. I think that that's just asinine. I think that's just crazy.
Well, and especially in the case of weaponry, like we've seen throughout like the past 2 weeks or so, that cops have been using tear gas, which has been outlawed as a chemical weapon.
Oh no, but Anthony, remember, it's not technically tear gas, so it's okay.
Well, and I think one of the really biggest ironies that I've seen coming out of these protests is that police fired tear gas at a protester. He threw the tear gas grenade back at them, and then he was then charged with attempted murder because of sending that grenade back, or sending that tear gas grenade, which is just like, okay, if that man is making an attempt on your life by throwing a tear gas grenade back at you, what were you doing to him when you shot that out of like a grenade launcher or some other apparatus that's more forceful than just throwing it? Like, and that's just like a complete double standard.
Yeah, it wasn't really even a thought in my mind of the idea of like, oh, in recent years, like the police have gotten like more funding or more weapons and stuff like that. The thing I was really focused on was like, this has always been a problem, but thankfully because of social media and the internet and everyone recording things on their phones, we are seeing it like 24/7. And so that kind of like expedites our process. Like, and that's why I remember like last year I read some article, a research article saying how like the amount of human progress we have made in like the last 20 years because of the internet like beats out like the past like 1,000 years of progress, just because of how quickly we gather that information and how quickly we learn. So to like the naysayers who are saying like, oh well, people were back in the day, they were very peaceful and did more peaceful protests and stuff like that. I can't believe like even some section of the current protesters are like taking down government buildings. Well, my response to that is, we have the internet, so there's less of an excuse with modern media to like not be aware of what's going on. So like 7 years does feel like a long time as opposed to 70, now that we have all this information. And like if I show you this video of what happened like this morning and you refute it, like that's just inexcusable if it's just pure video evidence.
The video of George Floyd, I mean, it paints it clear as day.
Yeah.
You see the entire process. There's nothing to really dispute about that.
I still honestly haven't been able to make myself watch that video. I know I probably should, but I just like
it's a lot. I can't even really kind of put it into words just how disgusting it all is.
And the crazy thing is like that video and like his death, like it seems like every day I'm reading a new thing that like is even more outrageous than his death, just because of the protests right now. And like ironically, this is the best time ever for a cop to kill someone, because it's just getting swept under the rug every single day. And I read these news articles of like, hey, some other person died, like, oh, this person got blinded for doing nothing, oh, this person in a wheelchair got shot in the head with a rubber bullet. And like, I mean, people make an outrage of it on like Twitter and stuff, but like in the grand scheme of things, it's getting swept under the rug.
Yeah. And this was, I mean, this doesn't have directly to do with what you just said, but it reminded me of it. Especially when you're talking about how, you know, the internet has made this stuff and it's super, super visible.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to my parents about this like 20 or so years ago, or even like 30, I guess. Maybe that'd be a bit more accurate. If something like, you know, George Floyd or Breonna Taylor happened, that would have been like at the very beginning of the 6 o'clock news, and it wouldn't have gone anywhere outside of that. Like it would just been dropped from public consciousness within a few minutes.
And I think that's definitely why there's been
for decades. I'm sorry, but
no, you go.
For decades, stuff like this has happened many, 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 many times over. I don't feel like that needs to be said, but it's hard for me to kind of envision how, like, the sheer amount of people that have lost their lives, particularly black people, that have lost their lives in these horrific situations like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And that we just don't no one knows about them.
Like,
exactly.
Just because the publicity just isn't there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so happy that the protests are still going and they are showing no signs of stopping, even internationally. Like, that fills me with hope, like, more than anything else. And ironically, the police officers responding to protests against police brutality with more police brutality makes the protests even stronger and brings even more people to the side. And I can only pray that these protests do not stop and they keep going as long as they need to go. And I mean, honestly, it's hard for me to really see what's going on living in Japan right now. But from what I see on the internet and from the news, it shows no signs of stopping. I don't know if that is the case, but that's my impression of it right now.
And it's also, for me, like, incredibly powerful because I don't think I've personally had such a strong reversal of opinion on such a large topic in such a short amount of time. Because if you had asked me like 2 to 3 weeks ago, like, what I thought of the police, I probably would have given you a generally positive opinion. But just like the overwhelming evidence over the past week and a half of the large, deep, incredibly like ingrained problems into basically every police force is just proving to me that the system that we currently have is just flawed to the point that it doesn't work.
It's terrible. It's inhumane. And that kind of reminds me, going back to Breonna Taylor for a bit here, because I can't remember who it was. It was either Kentucky Governor or the mayor of Louisville, but there was people were trying to get the body camera footage from Breonna Taylor's incident, and wouldn't you know it? The cameras, they just stopped working, when they entered her house without a warrant and killed her. The cameras, they just weren't working. And I was doing a little bit of research, and apparently in a lot of major big cities like Chicago, for example, the police unions will have policies set in place in regards to body camera footage. So, like in Chicago, for example, I don't know how true this is, but I mean, hey, this is called the Misinformation Exchange. Body camera footage is wiped after 1 year. There are places, there are unions, they're so powerful that they have the ability to just flat out eliminate evidence and nobody can do anything about it.
I mean, I've also definitely been seeing a lot of problems. I unfortunately can't recall any specifics, but a lot of problems with police unions themselves, where generally I would say that I am pro-union, but the union rules that police unions have been bringing to the foreground and making widespread have been poisonous, to say the very least, in terms of actually ensuring that properly trained people, or people who do not have immense amounts of hostility reports or excessive force reports against them, that the right people are actually in the right place.
There's a huge difference between, just some teacher that works at an elementary school that wants to be represented by a union and a person that is responsible for the security of someone else's life and enforcing the law. There's a very big difference in severity there. And I'm not going to say that cops aren't deserving to have a union in place. I feel like any profession should have at least some sort of union, but there has to be laws set in place that prevent institutions from just flat out interfering with justice. I don't think that has to be said. I would have thought that would already been something that would have been addressed, but I guess not in the year 2020. I guess not.
Did you guys see the information making the rounds about how apparently it is legal in, I believe it is 31 states, for a police officer to declare that they had consensual sex with someone that they're currently detaining as a suspect, because it's up to the police officer, because they are technically, quote unquote, the position of authority to have the final say on what the person in custody did. So, and then people come out and been like, yeah, no, I got raped, but then he said it was consensual. So, oh well. And I looked up some articles about this, and one of the articles I was reading about this wasn't even recently. It was from a few years ago, and the laws just haven't changed since then.
Yeah.
And see, I didn't even see that a few years ago. I saw that recently, but it's incredible how much injustice just goes under the radar.
Yeah, how much authority they have without any reason, just because they are the law.
And not only that, but oftentimes, when these quote unquote scandals happen and an officer is fired, they'll immediately get transferred over to some different other police department.
Yeah, every single thing I see on Twitter of like, I'll see a video of an officer doing something that he should just be locked up for like decades, and then I'll like look into the comments and be like, okay, I don't want Twitter to do their thing where they like cancel someone without knowing who they are, because like we've already seen that during these protests, and that's unfortunate. But there are some cases where they do find his badge number in the video or something, and then I follow up on it. It's like, cool, he got fired, and then the next reply is, oh, but he got transferred in the next month. So,
it's like,
okay,
cool,
great, to another state.
Yeah.
And did you guys see I think it was the LAPD, it was like the head members of it. They had a Zoom call for like 8 hours. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, and people just consistently joined and just unloaded on them, including Tony Hawk.
Tony Hawk!
Yeah. Wait, hold up. You're telling me Tony Hawk was on that call?
Yeah, Tony Hawk unloaded on the LAD.
How did I not hear about this?
They lined up for like they only got like 30 seconds to 2 minutes at a time. So, and Tony Hawk was not, he didn't cuss, he didn't get too violent, he just told it like it is and how disappointed he was. But there were some great, there are some great timestamps you can look up for that video. Like some
of the Tony Hawk one?
The Tony Hawk will be like in the YouTube comments for sure.
Okay.
He's like halfway through it, but it's 8 hours, so.
I posted a clip of him specifically talking.
Yeah. When Tony Hawk says you suck, you must be pretty bad.
Yeah.
And the heartbreaking part is that none of them are paying attention. None of them look interested or showing any emotion the entire time. And you can make the argument, oh, well, anyone would if they have to sit there for that long and the whole entire day and listen and get yelled at. But you can just tell.
This is not a normal situation.
Yeah, and you can tell, like, they aren't even looking most of the time. They're, like, on their phones or, like, writing something down. Especially, I believe it's, like, the Chief Moore, President Moore. And at one point, like, one woman is in the middle of her speech, and then she just screams at the top of her lungs, "Look at me!" And then some of them flinch, so you can tell that they actually aren't paying attention.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, from what I've heard, I mean, I don't know if either one of you have watched, like, Parks and Rec.
Oh, yeah, that's one of my favorite shows.
Like, yeah. From what I've heard, like, the town hall meetings they have on that show are not too far off from what they're actually like in real life.
Yeah, I can assume.
And I know I'm reaching on this. I know I'm being ridiculous when I'm saying this. But maybe, it's just kind of ingrained at them at this point to just not give a shit.
Oh, it totally is.
That still doesn't give them an excuse for all this.
That means they should be fired and replaced.
But
yeah. If there's any time that you're actually supposed to do your... Almost caught myself swearing there. This is a family-friendly podcast to an extent. If there's ever a time just to do your job, it's times like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you don't want to do it, get the hell out. Like, just don't do it. Just give it to someone else that can actually do and actually cares about representing their communities.
Did you guys happen to firsthand view the ads that Viacom was putting out on their channels like Nickelodeon and MTV and Nick Jr.?
I haven't watched that, but I did hear that a lot of people got upset at the Nickelodeon one.
Yeah, okay. Here's my piece on that. If your kid is scared because a TV channel tells you, oh no, the world is scary, yeah, maybe they should be scared. That's the point. The real world is scary. Imagine how scared George Floyd was.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's what the real world is like, then yeah, your little kid should know. Also, this was a weird choice for Nickelodeon to do, but so the one Nickelodeon played is the one with It was not the I Can't Breathe one, if that's the one you saw. Nickelodeon played a different, more kid-friendly one. That was just like a scroll of like orange background with white text, and it was just very vague, and it just said, we support Black Lives Matter, every kid should have a voice, everyone matters. It didn't even say anything specific or macabre. But the Nick Jr. one, I believe, played the actual I Can't Breathe one. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why they chose that. Like,
they gotta let them know young. Hey, 1, 2, 3. Don't trust the police.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I'm kind of building off of that.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I am too. I did like the Nickelodeon one, but there have been a lot of corporate, I guess, responses to this, which have just rung super, super hollow.
By I think there are
like the
exceptions.
Amazon one.
I don't.
The Amazon one.
Oh.
Well, I mean, for one thing, I don't think I have to explain why Amazon calling out people on their ethics might seem a little hypocritical. Because they were saying, we at Amazon, support all of our workers and shoppers or whatever who are black and whatever. And of course, the entire all the tweets were basically just like, all right, that's cool and all, but how about those income taxes you don't pay? How about that hero pay that you you kind of stopped paying your workers in the middle of a pandemic? How about all of that?
Well, I think there's been so many. Oh no, Luke, you go. Go.
Whenever stuff like this comes up, so obviously yes, we should not just immediately bow down whenever they do something good, and not to play devil's advocate, but I've always been on the side of I don't want to just attack the company for everything. At the very least, they are saying something. It's a very tricky
something's
position
better
to
than
be
nothing.
in. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Something is better than nothing. You need to keep going for sure. But
absolutely,
there's a large crowd on the internet, as there always is, saying, no, take that statement back. And it's do you want them to not even say Black Lives Matter? And some people will say, but they're a corporation. They don't actually care. They just want money. And yeah, they do. But the people behind those corporations are usually pushing for that statement. And they're usually fighting to make that statement happen. And also, yeah, they want my money. And if they're going to get my money, they need to be a more ethical company for me to more wholly support them. So that's kind of my take on the issue.
But there definitely has been a lot of incredibly hollow, all right, you're basically following just the social trend currently, Activision Blizzard, and them putting out a thing where they value equality and in human rights. You've got to be kidding. You absolutely have to be kidding. Or Colin Kaepernick's team, the 49ers, saying, putting out something that's Black Lives Matter. It's you've got to be kidding. No. You can't just put out that statement without reconciling the things that you have done in the past that actively work against the statement that you put out.
Yeah,
people were
good for trying,
the NFL for that.
But do better is basically my stance on it.
I think it was Roger Goodell, who's the commissioner of the NFL. He basically, and I'm just going to paraphrase this, he basically said, yeah, we were wrong. We should have supported this stuff 4 years ago. And everyone was just yeah, gee, no kidding. Really? And of course, Colin Kaepernick's probably still not going to get a role on any team.
Oh,
but,
hey,
not. Guys, we did a wrong. And, are we going to do something about it? Probably not.
Didn't EA...
EA weirdly had the best response.
But EA, a year or two ago, didn't they censor the mention of Kaepernick's mention in a song, even though he wasn't in the game? Yeah,
they did.
Yeah, so that's that's the biggest hot take I saw of no. That's one of those moments where personally, I'm like, you don't even deserve to say that.
I mean, like,
you never
like,
even reconciled that.
Like, if that happened, I definitely agree. But like, without that, like, without knowing that, I personally felt that EA had one of these stronger responses because they didn't just put out a statement. They said, "Hey, we put out this statement. We are donating to different companies, and we are actually going to try to do something internally to actually fix our problems," which is a significantly stronger statement than most other companies put out.
And EA is a big company, so there's totally like, I'm not saying that the whole EA company is responsible for censoring the mention of his name in one rap song. So that totally could make sense that it's like just the legal team was like, oh, we're scared, we don't even want to try, but then the company as a whole right now is like, no, we are a bunch of individuals who collectively care.
Yeah. But with EA games, with their sports games in particular, they do have a severe like racism problem when it comes to their communities. And up until this point, there hasn't really seemed to be much of anything done in order to limit that. Just for an example, like on their hockey games, their NHL games, there is no report button.
Oh, that's a very bad idea.
I mean, you can pretty much say whatever you want and get away with it.
And on that same line, it's like Activision stood up and said, "Hey, we're cracking down on racism in our chats." And so the big question is, it's like, all right, that's good. Why didn't you do that however many years ago? Why isn't this something that you were actively looking into from the beginning as soon as you heard like a whisper that there was like a racism in your player base? Like that is come on.
Yeah.
Like,
good job for doing it, but let's never forget that it took them this long to get there. Like, I hope that just because, like, how quick the internet is to forget stuff.
Oh yeah.
I hope that we remember the companies that do make the hollow messages, even if they are trying, and we need to really keep track of them and to make sure they are holding this even after the protests end.
Yeah. But with Blizzard's case in particular, I honestly, I especially after the whole fiasco with the Hong Kong protester and Hearthstone and the tournament, I find that one especially hollow.
Yeah,
because they've already basically proven that
they don't care.
If those human rights interfere with the interests of Big Daddy China, then it doesn't matter.
Oh, and the other one that also especially rung hollow to me was Disney, because you can see in a lot of their advertising that they have actively minimized the role that people of color have in their advertising posters. Like, you look at like the change that they made for Black Panther posters.
Yeah, I was about to talk about that.
You look at how they shifted Finn's location on the Force Awakens poster, and then they say that they're standing with John Boyega, like when he's speaking out now, when they didn't stand up for him, or Kelly Marie Tran, when they were like receiving harassment back in 2015 and 2017. Like, come on, you have to be better. You are just capitalizing on the social movement. Your actions in the past have not lined up with what you are saying now. Make them align in the future. In terms of slightly more positive things, Humble Bundle, the online marketplace, said that they are putting out a $1 million fund to help create Black-led or Black-developed video games.
I saw that.
That's nice.
And there are also a few different bundles with proceeds going directly towards, I'm not sure the exact causes, but like important causes at this point in time. There's one bundle that has over 700 games that I want to say you can get for like $5 or so.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. I bought like a few like of those bundles last night. It's insane the amount of games that are in that, and also what games are in that. Like, obviously not all of them are huge games, but that bundle has some really heavy hitters.
Yeah,
I actually didn't know about this.
It's like Night in the Woods is in one of them.
Yeah, Quadrilateral Cowboy.
Right. Send me that bundle.
Maybe?
I wanna get that bundle.
It's like some crazy stuff is in there. Plus like a bunch of small itch.io stuff that are like fun. Like, and they're continually adding new games to it. Like, I think today they're adding like 150 new games. So
yeah, and the bundle for racial justice and equality on itch.io,
minimum is
740
$5.
plus works, minimum $5 donation to get over 740 different video games.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so hopefully this like gets huge.
And then there's also the Black Lives Matter support bundle, which that one is more expensive. If you want to get everything, you have to do $40 or above. But if you do that, you get recent games like Coffee Talk, get others. What's the other stuff is in there? That one I don't know as many games in. But the bundle for racial justice and equality is legitimately insane in terms of value. It's raised over $1 million at this point. All proceeds will be donated to the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund and Community Bail Fund, split 50-50.
That's good. I've noticed a few different organizations donating to those bail funds. Because obviously, there's a lot of people that are being arrested
unjustly.
And especially in these protests like that guy that you were mentioning, where he tossed the tear gas canister back, and he was arrested for trying to kill an officer. Oh, okay, all right.
I mean, people are saying I've seen a few people unfortunately say it's like, man, why would you donate to the bail fund? They're just bailing out like rioters and people who have like defaced buildings or destroyed property. And no, that's not all of the people that are getting arrested right now. A lot of the people,
such a small fraction.
A lot of people who are exercising their First Amendment right for peaceful protest are getting arrested and then have to post bail for that.
And then obviously the media is painting it in a different light. So being in Japan right now, I have tried to talk about the situation with some of my Japanese contacts, and sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. And it's an international thing, so they might not be getting the whole picture. So I was talking to a friend, and they were saying that not like I support like the movement and everything, of course. And then I was mentioning how a lot of police are like attacking people, and then they were like, "Oh well, are they?" It's definitely bad, but I think the police might also just be trying to protect themselves with some of the more violent protests. And so that nuance of it is like getting lost in translation, where like I had to be like, yeah, like 0.01% of the time. But every single day I wake up and fall asleep to countless videos that cannot be taken any other way of just peaceful protesters getting hurt and sometimes even straight up dying.
I'm going to guess all of you have seen the thread documenting the all of the incidents, the videotaped incidents of the police attacking press members.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Or it's like the organization that documents those things, they documented 190 incidents throughout all of 2019, whereas I believe they've already exceeded 200 over the past 2 weeks alone in terms of actions taken against America's press.
I hope that the Lafayette Square incident is something that is written down in our history textbooks from here on out, but I know it won't. That is like, that should be
I don't know.
biggest. part.
That very much could be written
Yeah,
down
but
in
it
textbooks.
won't. I just know it won't, because any textbook gets written in will be like, oh, that's fake news, but it should be written in every textbook, because there's no way to go about it. It's so awful from every angle, even if you're religious. Like, he didn't even open the Bible.
As the
it wasn't even
person,
yeah,
as the religious person on this podcast, I can say that was disgusting.
Yeah, like it. Even if you're like an evangelist or something, like, it wasn't his Bible. He didn't give enough time to get the protesters out. The person, it's like almost comical. It's like satirical. They're like, "Is that your Bible, Mr. President?" And he said, "It is a Bible."
And he didn't even
Like,
didn't even attempt to pray or like even put up a show about like actually engaging in Christianity. It's just, here I am holding a Bible.
I read the headline saying Trump clears people out for a Bible photo op, and I was like, okay, I'll read that article later, because like there's no way that can be like exactly what the article says, but it was.
That's the thing though with Trump. That's the thing though with Trump. Like, an article will say one thing, and you're just like, there's no way that can be true. And then you look into it, and you're like, oh, that is 100% true.
Yeah.
And that video especially, one of the things that I just, going back to, him holding the Bible, it just astounds me. Like, he looks like, for one thing, that he was just made aware of what the concept of a book is, and he's still kind of uneasy about it.
Yeah, he like turns it in multiple ways so he can get good angles, but he's still unfamiliar.
Really far away from his body. Like, he's just kind of like holding it out in the middle of like the air.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't even have it open or anything. He's not reading. He's just like, yes, I am holding a human Bible.
I love the Pope just full on blasted him for that.
I mean,
did you guys see that?
The Washington Post.
The Pope was like, this was disgusting.
Worthwhile newspapers, because y'all saw that the New York Times posted that op-ed from Tom Cotton that said it's time to send the troops in, right?
Yeah, and that was really weird, because they're usually left-leaning, and so like,
the New York Times has a very bad history over the past 4 years of both sidesing issues that like should only have one side. Like,
well, I respect some of the things that they've put out.
Oh yeah,
but even I'm not going to deny they've got a really bizarre history when it comes to the op-ed pieces that they put out. That just kind of seem to fly like in the complete opposite direction of everything that institution is at least supposed to stand for.
Because like I think there is absolutely a space for healthy debate on issues, on things that are contentious, but I think when it comes to things like peaceful protesting, you should not say, hey, it's time to send in the troops. It's time to get militaristic in here. That's not something that you should be putting on.
I mean, I didn't read the article, but I assume the argument is that it is blowing out of proportion the amount of violent protesters, and that is their argument. This leads into like a bigger point that I've been thinking about for so long, and it's been brought up again in this, and like when I've been talking to my family and stuff. Like, there's nothing wrong, obviously, with taking both sides and like listening and having a nuanced stance of like, I'm not going all the way in this direction. Like, this side's bad, but this side's also bad. But in the past, like, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm only 24, but in the past like 10 or so years when I've become more aware of this stuff, there's been an overwhelmingly majority opinion once you get off the internet of more center-leaning people. And this is not me saying like centrists are bad, but it's with stances on this sort of situation where people are saying, yeah, the protests are for a good thing, but they're not totally good because of this, so I'm going to stand in the middle a little bit. And that's where the problem, I think, lies. Like, that's, in my opinion, the second biggest problem after the police. Just the overwhelming majority who are either silent and or just, but bad on both sides. Like, hence in Charlottesville, when Trump said there's bad on both sides, the reason that, we all agree that's an awful statement because it takes a center stance on something that doesn't need to have a center stance.
It takes a
There's
stance
nothing wrong
center
with
stance on white supremacy.
Yeah.
Like, Yikes. Come on.
There's nothing wrong, again, with taking the evidence and taking time out to verify things. But, like, I've been talking with people, including my family, and they sometimes have stances where it's like, you know, they'll play devil's advocate. So many people play devil's advocate when it's just not the right time to play it. Like, right now is not the time to play devil's advocate.
No.
Unless if it's someone, like, getting wrongfully accused and getting canceled, it's not the time to say, oh, but I don't know about this part of the protest. I don't know about this. Or, like, yeah, the protests are okay, but, like, they're destroying government buildings. So don't you think that kind of compromises what they're saying? No, that shouldn't be the discussion. The discussion should be Black Lives Matter. Police brutality is bad. End of discussion. As long as, like, the protesters aren't hurting people. And so I can't believe that that message is continually getting lost because people habitually want to play devil's advocate. And it's from a good place a lot of the time, I'm sure, of, like, I want to make sure I'm getting the full thing. But the fact of the matter is, if you're not Black, then you won't even have the chance to play devil's advocate in that situation. It's like a lot of white people in America are privileged enough to play devil's advocate, which just
Absolutely.
In the end, it makes it worse. Like, it's from a good place, but we need to get the point across that just makes these situations worse, and it slows down the movement as soon as you say, but, you just need to promote it. Like, it is a tricky situation sometimes. You don't need to go all the way overboard like Twitter does sometimes, because that's obviously bad. But there's a middle ground of the middle grounds. You know, like, don't be so in the middle. You need to
Don't
your
both
stance
sides
should be
racism,
more.
but-
Your stance should be more than the sum of its parts. You shouldn't just take it all together and then present the facts. You need to analyze it and have a stance beyond that, and then push for that.
Well, because what you're saying kind of reminds me of a few things. Going back to Kaepernick, obviously, you know, he was kneeling for the anthem to protest police brutality and institutional racism. But that message of why he was protesting never got across to, let's just be real here, white America.
Yep.
The only message that they really picked up on, or at least cared about, was the fact that he was disrespecting the flag of the United States of America.
I don't know if I'm going to come out as like a super radical leftist, but I'm not exactly proud of American history. I think, like, even in the times that we have been, quote unquote, the good guys, we still have some really, really shady stuff that we do. Like World War II, you can't look at that without, like, Japanese internment, the mass genocide we committed with the atomic bomb. Like, we are not even close to a perfect country within 50 miles.
I'm lucky that my history classes so my favorite class in hindsight in my entire public school career was my AP US history class, because that was like when we just straight up learned, like, oh, America's pretty bad, like, throughout all of history. Like, you know, we had those remnants, but this was like we talked about it in depth of, like, you know, us, like, starting the Revolutionary War was kind of like, we were just kind of like babies a little bit. Paying, like, taxes on our tea, that wasn't maybe that big of a deal. Or, like, a lot of it just basically kind of radicalized us, and we were like, oh, I understand. But not every education system is good enough to present it like that. Like, even today, so many schools, especially elementary schools, still call Native Americans Indians. They still do it. That's crazy to me. That they're still that ignorant to call them that.
And the thing that astounds me the most is that you have people, and by people I mean white people, that like to, wave this magic wand and be like, yes, we stopped racism. Racism is no longer a thing.
Is this Obama?
Institutional racism is no longer a thing. We are not racist. I'm like, well, okay, what about like the internment camps that you brought up? What about the Chinese slave labor that we used to build the railroads? What about like any
what
of
about
that stuff?
redlining? What about redlining that still has
What about
active
the Trail
offense
of
today?
Tears?
Mm-hmm.
And people just, they like to, put a Band-Aid over on it and, do the old George Bush and say, mission accomplished.
Oh,
And
that's good right there.
It reminds me of this old Stephen Colbert joke, which is unfortunately still relevant. Where he's in this sort of fake interview, I guess, with another person, and he says, I don't see any color. Everyone is white.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Like,
yeah,
and
like,
of course, it's the same group of people that's just like, yeah, racism is no longer a thing. Screw you, Black Lives Matter people.
mm-hmm.
Blue lives matter. All lives matter. You don't have anything to complain about. Yada yada. Like, are you even looking at yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Are you even paying attention to the things you're saying and doing? Like, how dense can you possibly be?
Circling back a little bit to the Kaepernick thing, even though it wasn't like the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm sure you guys have also seen the tweet going around that it's like, wow, I can't believe that like U.S. students every day for their entire life had to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And like they wrote out the tweet of like everything, the entire lyrics of the statement or whatever. And yeah, I thought that the same thing when I was like a junior or senior in high school. I started to be like, wait a second.
Why are we doing this?
Why? This is messed up. Like, a lot. And like it also has like religious stuff still in the statement.
Well, that was done to make us distinct from the godless communists.
Yeah. So like, so I'm gonna bring up a little bit of a different side of this kind of take. And this is not for me to play like devil's advocate. It's just interesting food for thought. From at least my personal experience, being in different countries and cultures throughout my life and now living in Japan. And I'm also meeting a lot of people who are not from Japan, but still foreigners, like especially from Europe. And they come and they will say like jokes that are like not, like some pretty off-color jokes, which like to me is fine if like we're good friends. But if someone says an off-color joke when they don't know you well, that's a big red flag. Because it's like, oh, you probably just believe that. Whereas I say it with my close friends because we're ironic enough to know like I'm not actually sexist when I say this joke. It's like blatant. I'm pretending to be a bad person
because so, you know that you're lampooning the people who would actually say that.
Yeah. So, but getting back to my point, I've come to realize that like, shockingly, America is one of the better countries at like equality for rights for a lot of people. And that makes me want to push even harder for like our equality and everything, because everyone looks to America as this is the country that quote unquote doesn't have it. And yet we still have all these problems.
Absolutely.
So what does that say about other countries too, though? Like we need to push for America. And then after that, like inspire other countries to be better. Like being in Japan right now, like Japan is such a sexist country. Like everyone knows that. Like that's and they're also a very racist country. Like everyone knows that.
I've definitely heard that as well.
Not in an as violent way, because police brutality, as far as I know, I'm not reading Japanese. That's
because you can't get a gun in Japan.
Yeah. As a foreigner in Japan who's not fluent in the language, it doesn't seem like police brutality is as big as it is in America. So there's totally, a justification for why it's a much bigger deal in America than in Japan right now. But it still exists everywhere in the world. And so that's why I'm so happy that the BLM protests are going international.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of leads into something I wanted to talk about, where I went to a protest in Shibuya yesterday afternoon. I was hesitant about going at first because it's not an American protest. Like, if I was in America, and I wish I was, I would be going to protest all the time. I wish I could be back in Pennsylvania right now to go to protest in Harrisburg. I really do. So I saw this, and this protest originated because there was a Turkish man who has lived here for 20 years, owns a restaurant, fluent in Japanese, but he was stopped by the police while driving a car for some traffic violation, and then he was like continually pushed over and harassed by the police, and that video went viral. So they decided to have a protest in Shibuya, I believe, and then in that protest last week, a Japanese person was detained by the police. And, you know, Japan has a 99% conviction rate. And also, if you're detained by the police, I think you can be held up to 23 days, I believe.
That's crazy.
Without, like, any reason.
Wowza.
That's insane.
Yeah, like, so my experience with the Japanese police, and from everything I've seen on the street, is they're so helpful. They're so nice and everything. Obviously, that does not excuse the bad police, though. And that system is very bad. So because I couldn't read up too much on it, I was hesitant on going. Because the reason I was going was more so because I wanted to promote the BLM movement. But if this is still a similar enough situation with the police reform, then that was enough to convince me to go. Also, one of the reasons I was ending up going was because in Japan, unless if you are a citizen of Japan, if you are a foreigner, you can technically be kicked out of the country for associating with, quote unquote, groups that cause disruption or influence Japanese politics.
Oh, wow.
So, like,
that's very extreme.
There was just a chance.
That seems pretty broad.
Yep, it is. So we had to say, no, this is not a protest. It's a promotion of peace. This is a demonstration.
Nice. Nice.
And also,
get on
it's
with the
in my
technicality.
working contract that I can't do that sort of thing. And my old housing contract. So, like, that's super messed up. And that was kind of a reason that made me want to go. Like, the risk of me going made me want to go even more because that's just so messed up.
Yeah. Because if you don't take that risk, then, like, you're... And I don't mean to, like, say this to accuse you, but if you don't take that risk, then it just gets, like, perpetuated by people not standing up and making people aware of that.
Yeah. And, like, not to accuse anyone who didn't go, but, like, yeah, exactly. You need to stand up for that. And, like, there are people in America literally dying right now going to protest. So, like, me getting kicked out of the country is, like, barely compares to that. So, like, you know. So the protest, it was, like, an hour and a half to 2 hours. We walked up and down Shibuya and Shibuya Crossing and stuff. And it was sanctioned by the police. So they had a car that... blocked off the streets for us, actually, and the police were very helpful about it. And we were doing various chants, like no justice, no peace, something police. We did a bunch of different chants, and like it was like kind of broken English as well. It was kind of funny because it was like a short lolly Japanese girl leading the chants with a megaphone. So I was
hey,
like,
why not?
Yeah, I was like, this is rad. Go for it, girl. But one of the chants that I didn't chant was no justice, no police, F the police. And I didn't say that because I'm not in America right now. If I was in America, yeah, I'd say that maybe. But
you're just like,
yeah,
I kind of want to keep my job and all that stuff, so I'm just gonna keep that down low.
Even beyond that, it's like the police have been very nice to me as a foreigner, and I have not read really anything at all aside from that one incident a week ago about the police being so bad that I would say F the police. In front of the police, who are being very nice about escorting us throughout Shibuya and, like, blocking traffic for us. Like, there was probably 200 policemen set up all over Shibuya to help us. So, you know, like, that doesn't mean there are no bad police, but I just didn't feel comfortable saying that, because I still wanted this to be a protest of the Japanese way of handling things, not American way of handling things, because at that point it's just kind of like, you know, like, I'm going to a different country to protest something that's happening that's this country is unrelated in promoting, you know? So it got a little iffy there with how I felt about it, but overall, like, a lot of foreigners showed up. I was hoping some more would, but we were able to stop, like, traffic and make a bunch of people look at us, and a lot of news reporters came. And I think there's, like, another one happening today for people who are just Japanese, for a more Japanese-centric one. But I'm really happy that protests are popping up around the world, and I was reading that a bunch are happening in Europe as well. So I'm glad that this is happening, and I hope these things still continue to happen, regardless of the country, regardless of the time, because this is getting away from it a little bit. But yeah, as I said, Japan is still racist and sexist. It's a very nice country to live in, but those problems are still obviously rampant. Like, I cannot get I can't get like 70% of apartments as a foreigner. I just can't. I cannot.
Just because you're not Japanese.
Yes. And like, even to get an apartment, I have to go through like middleman companies and get a Japanese guarantor company to like vouch for me and stuff. It's just, it's messed up.
Extreme. That is extreme.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's because like, oh, foreigners, so some of it is understandably justified because Japan has a high immigration rate of foreigners who don't speak the language well. So that causes a lot of problems with the landlords whenever anything happens. You know, they don't understand the contracts or anything. So that's understandable. And the other part of it is sorting trash and just Japanese customs that, you know, they have in their society. And as a foreigner, it's hard to keep up with some of those. So to an extent, I understand it. But only to an extent. It's still extreme, even given those. It's just like, it is like the definition of systemic racism. And like, it's really like fascinating seeing all of that firsthand. Still not as bad as being a black person in America, for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's enough for me to like talk to my family and any naysayers about it of like, no. This is what it actually feels like, at least a little bit. And like the immigration rates,
somewhat of an idea.
Yeah, somewhat. Like enough for me to like tell people to shut up because, hey, you know, I'm a white person, so I can at least use that white privilege to be like, no. This is at least my take here, and it's a billion times worse in America as a black man.
Yeah, because like one of the
immigrating into America is hard because immigrating into Japan is hard. So I'm more sympathetic about that.
One of the bad takes I saw was like somebody who like has like their location set to Japan, just being like, "Yo, what on earth is going on over on American Twitter? There's no politics happening on Japanese Twitter right now." Just like, oh.
Yeah, he did not see the hashtag for this protest.
Yeah, I guess not.
Man, don't you love my non-political video games, Metal Gear Solid? Man,
I was about to make that joke.
Yeah.
I saw somebody trying to convince somebody that Fallout wasn't political. So
oh my god, that happens like every month.
That is some like 10 million IQ right there.
And one more thing before I get off of the Japanese side of things. So I'm sure you guys saw the pen video going around of why Japanese people don't get coronavirus. This was a month ago.
Because they like don't shake hands, right?
No. It was a video on TBS, which is like not the NHK, but you know, it's like a big broadcasting channel, news channel. And they were saying like, this is the reason Japanese people don't get coronavirus so easily and why we're doing better. It's because English speakers say this, "Kore wa pen desu." Sorry, this is a pen.
Oh, yeah.
And then the P is explosive, like pen. and they held a piece of paper in front of them, and they saw the paper jet out.
Kidding me.
But then they were like, and this is Japanese way of saying it, "Kore wa pen
Kore wa
desu,"
pen desu.
and the paper didn't move. But pen in Japanese and in English are the exact same. Like it's the exact same word, and the P's in Japanese are the exact same. So it was just straight up propaganda, and everyone was like, "Ooh, claps, interesting." I didn't know that.
Straight up racism.
And I sent that to some of my Japanese friends, and some of them were like, sorry about that. I don't like it either. And, I was joking with them. And they're like, ooh, yeah, that's embarrassing. But then, like, I sent it to one person, and she was like,
yeah.
So that's why. And I was like, oh my God. Like,
you need to have like a sit down heart to heart with her.
Yeah, the Japanese,
listen.
They do have still that superior mentality sometimes. It's just like the way their society has like built it, and because they don't have immigration, like there is just that part of that's like they're also just, even if they don't think they're superior, it's just ignorance because they have so little immigration and their country is so insular. They don't actually see much outside of it. And then the other thing is, my friend told me, I couldn't find the proof of this because it's Japanese. My friend told me that on TBS, the same channel, they invited an American to talk about the riots in America and what's going on. And they are a Republican who every year goes to the annual gathering of like white supremacists at a park named after the founder of the KKK.
So clearly he's going to be a great person to ask about this.
So they just didn't do the research on it. So, so that promotes a lot of people in Japan probably getting the wrong idea too. Like, because Japanese like news outlets just wouldn't be reading too in depth to it, or they read the American media and they don't get the full picture. So they're like, oh, bad on both sides, which is technically true. So then they like, that's the story. Not all Japanese people think like that, but some inevitably do.
And I'm not talking about Japanese people when I'm asking this.
Mm-hmm.
But in regards to the I already forgot the name. But the
TBS.
TBS, yeah, the channel that aired that. How much of it is just not doing the research, or how much of it is just
who knows, man?
Japan has a negative view of black people kind of already. So we're just going to feed into that stereotype for viewership.
I don't know. On the hashtag for the protest, there were some people giving tips, and one of the tips was saying, if someone interviews you and for a news channel and you are a foreigner, say you wouldn't like to talk, because sometimes they like to paint racism is only a foreigner issue and racism doesn't happen in Japan. Who knows how big of a deal that is? I don't know, but it could be a little bit of both. I genuinely can't tell, but it's some of both for sure. Because I'll also talk to some people at meetups and stuff in bars, and they'll be like, we'll talk about like the sexism of Japan, and they're a Japanese man, and they'll be like, yeah, but we've gotten a lot better at it than in the past, so like I'm really happy with it. And I just want to be like, sure, but you're still pretty bad. Like, you're pretty bad. Like, and there's just no way to go about it, because they're like, yeah, we're getting better by a lot. And meanwhile, they couldn't even do the Me Too movement. Did you hear about that? The Me Too movement in Japan?
No.
Did it not happen in Japan whatsoever?
So they didn't have the Me Too movement because there's no way they could have had the Me Too movement. So what they did have was the Me Kutsu movement. Kutsu means shoe. No. Kutsu means shoe. So
wait a
hold
minute.
Up. Hold up.
What the Me Kutsu movement was, their attempt at trying to do something. So when it was happening, they were like, they promote. So it's not like a law, but it's just like companies tell Japanese women to look pretty and to wear high heels and dresses and stuff, like if in their service jobs, even like standing up. No. And so they were saying this really hurts. Like, we don't want to do this. Heels really hurt. Make it an option. Like, it shouldn't be mandatory for all of these jobs.
Absolutely.
And then, so they were pushing for that, and nothing happened. So they couldn't even do that. And then last year there was a thing about glasses, where they were trying to push for glasses reform, because women aren't allowed to wear glasses in some lines of work, like for air traffic control and for like beauty. So Taylor, it's because if you're working in an airplane situation, there could be a reflection, and like you could blind yourself, and like that's dangerous because you need to press the right button, or like they need to see your eye if you're selling makeup, and the glasses hide your eyes, and also you look ugly, so that's why.
I mean, that's just false. Glasses are attractive, and if you think otherwise, I will fight you.
All right, well, I guess I'm ugly then.
Just like glasses, so
like I don't know. Maybe being able to see while you're working is important. Maybe that's just something that people should prioritize.
Yeah. Well, they just say like wear contacts in that case, but like so that couldn't. But
yeah,
get past
there's
either.
there's no politics in Japan though. Just to be clear on that, there's no politics in Japan, right?
Yep. And not only that, but Japan, they solved racism, so that's not a thing there either.
Mrs. Obama will be there to congratulate them shortly.
Yeah.
Yeah. They solved racism. All they have to say now is Nihongo Jozu, and you're like, oh, no racism. The joke for that is that Nihongo Jozu means your Japanese is very good, and every Japanese person you talk to in Japan will say that to you, even if you don't know Japanese. It is it is their reflexive thing. It makes me feel so demoralized.
I'm just curious, but is it kind of like their way of saying like how people in the South would be like, oh, bless your heart? Is it basically like a Japanese person's way of saying
like go to?
You're an idiot. Just go.
Oh no,
whatever yourself.
No, so actually they genuinely mean it. It's just they have such little interaction with foreigners and such a low standard of like foreigners learning the language that they always are surprised. Because a lot of times, foreigners won't know the language because they'll be tourists in Tokyo. And
Logan Paul,
and I'm not going to put the entire blame on Japanese people, because I'm going to be honest, a lot of foreigners in Japan are not good. And a lot of people just refuse to learn the language. Like, it is, to some degree, on us as well. And I get so upset when I talk to people who are like, oh, I've lived here for like 3 years, but I have no intention on learning the language.
Which is such a shame, because Japanese is such a fun language to learn.
Yeah,
it's such a fun language.
And that's just so ignorant. Can you imagine living in America but not speaking English? You would get like killed. Like, people would hate you. But in Japan, I'm welcomed. Like, they think it's cute, and they bend over backwards to try to help me, and I'm so thankful for that. Like, they're so helpful for me, and then it's like unintentionally that leads to some like just indoctrinated like slight racism and like bigotry just from like stereotypes and like not interacting with like foreigners who are like really in Japan and are living here for a long time. So it's a complex issue, unfortunately, where like they want to help, but it's like, they just don't have enough interaction with foreigners. Japan could make that easier by just making the immigration easier, and also by making Japanese an easier language to learn. Looking at you, kanji.
Oh, but I mean, you can't get rid of kanji though. Like that would oh man, like that would make it technically easier to read, but you can get so much of like the essence of the sentence by looking at the kanji.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's still, there's got to be. I mean, there's obviously going to be some ways they could make it better. There is some movement to abolish kanji, actually, with Japanese people, but it's never going to happen. Like, that just won't happen.
I'm not even sure. Like, as someone who is currently studying Japanese and will have to study 2,000 kanji to become quote-unquote fluent, I wouldn't want them to abolish kanji. And maybe that's a hot take, but kanji are fun.
Yeah, but it's like, it's such a hard barrier of entry too, because like I I'll be looking at a sign or a menu getting something to eat, and there's no possible way of me even looking up the individual words because each kanji has multiple readings and is different when combined with other kanji, and it depends on what meaning, and you don't know which set of kanji makes a full word, or like, oh, is this a noun or is this like a verb? Well, I guess you can tell most kanji are just nouns, but like there's no way for me to just look it up in a dictionary easily. It's just
because there's so many of them.
Yeah, there's so many. Yeah, and like you don't know at what point it stops being the word because there's no spaces in Japanese for words. So like it's just impossible, like unless if you like really know the stroke order and the individual radicals that make up the kanji and you know that logic very well. It's just I use Google Translate, but I can't use Google Translate to really teach me what the individual kanji mean on the fly. It's just it's just going to take years for me to know it, and that's all I can do. I just have to study every day. So that's a huge barrier of entry. Not to mention it's like on the other side of the world from America, so and it's an island. So
yeah. But speaking as someone that is not currently learning Japanese and has very little interest in doing so because I have heard just the complexities with, as you said, kanji and like the different alphabet systems that they kind of have at play. It just seems kind of like from an outsider's perspective, it seems really needlessly complicated.
Oh, it is. Like, do you know the origin of Japanese?
Well, they essentially, from what I understand, and you know, I am totally ignorant on this, so my opinion does not matter. My, ideas on this don't matter. But from what I understand, it's basically like they copied off of China's homework, and they're just like, no, we did it.
Yeah, so they took all the kanji as Japanese or Chinese, and then they were like, okay, we're going to keep all of your readings, but we're also going to have our own readings, and we're going to use both of them. So the Chinese readings are the onyomi, and the Japanese readings are the kunyomi. So you need to know both the Chinese and the Japanese readings, and you need to know when to swap between them. So they were like, you made this? I made this.
I made this. Yeah.
Yeah, like the entire language is built off of that. So, I mean, I don't speak Chinese. I don't know, but Chinese could be easier. Again, don't shoot me on this. Like, it's Misinformation podcast, but like, I would assume Chinese is easier because they only have one reading or two per kanji as opposed to like a bunch. Not to mention kanji is a Japanese word. Even though it's a Chinese letter.
It really feels like they were just like, yeah, well, like, my rocket ship is got like lasers and like
mine's red,
a moonbeam, and it goes like oh boy.
Yeah, the language is pleasant to listen to. I think it's a very pleasant language to listen to because their vowels are very clear. Coming from someone who studied like singing in college, it's very nice.
Yeah, I'm currently studying German, so I don't think I can really say the exact same thing.
Oh, German's also a fun language. That one's also fun.
Yeah. It's weird, like, how, at least to me, like, it seems kind of weird how similar the sentence structure is just, like, directly to English. Feels like a lot of things you can just basically just, change the word to its German meaning and it's the same exact structure.
Is it a Romance language? I forget.
I believe so.
I don't think so.
Let me look it up real quick. Is German a Romance language?
I studied French for a while.
German is not a Romance language. The Romance languages are Spanish, French, and Italian because they are largely derived from Latin. German is not.
Okay. That makes sense then.
Mm-hmm.
German doesn't sound like a very romantic language.
No.
Haben Sie ein Flugzeugabwehrkanonen? That's the one thing I remember from German. That means, do you have an anti-aircraft gun?
Wait, why do you know that?
Because my dad
Why do you know that?
My dad took German when he was in college.
Okay.
And he passed that down to me. I took German in middle school and high school,
Mhm.
but all I remember is that sentence right there. Essentially,
I know Lufthauser, because that's a pretty rad indie game.
It is. It is a good indie game.
Is Arubaito a
Yes.
Japanese, or sorry, a German word?
It is a German word that
Yes,
Japanese lifted
because-
from German.
Yeah, because it's a loan word in Japanese.
Okay. I have not. I don't know what that word is. I have not
It means part-time
studied that
job.
one yet.
Or yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So speaking of languages and just Japan, so we ended the stay-at-home thing this week.
You're talking about that a little bit.
Yeah, bad idea. I also think it's a bad idea. America did it. And then also after the first day, like, reports came out like, uh-oh, cases went up. And I'm like, yeah, I figured that when I got on the morning rush hour train and was crushed against the wall, as expected.
Like in a country, where they jam pack people into cars.
Yeah, they literally have
train
pushers.
cars. Yeah,
that is a job. You are a designated pusher to push people in the trains.
Hey, maybe if we lift these restrictions, don't you think that just because of just the bare concepts of our culture, that we might just, I don't know, subject people to, a disease like this pretty easily?
Yeah, and they said their numbers were going down, but so first of all,
not.
they were obviously like not telling the whole truth. Even back like when the Olympics got canceled, because as soon as the Olympics got canceled, they started telling the truth about their numbers. Like, it's so obvious, and they started saying, "Oh, we only have like 20 cases." 2 weeks ago, and that was how many cases were tested and accurate, but they only did like 50 tests. So yeah, and like no one's talking about that. The only people who are like, this is a really bad idea, that I've heard be very vocal about it are the foreigners, because they're keeping track of what's happening in their homes, and a lot of us are from America, so we know like this is a bad idea. But
yes.
Japan's work ethic is like, we just want to work and we want to save face. David put it in a very interesting way where he was like, America is just ignorant because they don't care and they're dumb, where we just want to go, we are protesting staying at home because we just want our freedom. But Japan is like, oh, we just want to work and we want to be good citizens. And like, so it's like two sides of the same coin, and it's like, which one is worse? Who is to say? But we aren't so different, you and I.
I mean, they're
Japan.
both pretty bad. They're both pretty darn bad.
Yeah, they're both pretty bad. It's just, man, two sides of the same coin.
The state of 2020.
Yeah, but anyways, I don't think we're going to go back into stay at home until it gets so bad, because that's embarrassing. And like, if it sucks, because if they don't handle it well, the Olympics could get canceled again, and if it gets delayed past next year, they just aren't having it in Tokyo, and that marks like the second or third time in a row like the Tokyo Olympics has just like been canceled.
And the thing with the Olympics too is, I mean, for one thing, no one should host the Olympics because it's a giant scam.
Yep.
That it's basically an excuse for the Olympics committee just to, siphon tax money from these governments. And granted, once again, I'm not familiar all that much with Japanese culture, but from what I understand, their economy hasn't exactly been the greatest since the 90s.
Yeah,
well,
I don't really
they
know.
had the crash in the 90s, but I thought they've been doing better since then.
Yeah, I think they've been doing better, and that's a lot of that is because of the Cool Japan movement. Are you aware of what Cool Japan is?
I mean, I'm just gonna assume it has to do with like what anime and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is actually like a movement where, like, in the 90s during that crash, like, the government sat down these big brain people, like galaxy brain move right here. They sat down in a room, like the SEAL operatives, and they were like, we need to do something about Japan's economy. And then these geniuses were like, let's put money into Japanese media and make it cool. So that way we can recruit like international eyes and like tourism and like buying our products. So we become a global culture. And
I mean, it worked. It worked.
And
It did.
It worked.
the universe generally regards this as one of the best moves because
And
look
now-
at us now.
And now the same thing is happening in Korea.
Yeah, like it's a very good move to do because, like, you know, America.
And then anime was kind of saved and also
like,
killed at the same time.
Yeah, so Cool Japan worked, and I think that's a big reason for why their economy is better because, like, their tourism is very big. Obviously, right now it's not good, but because of
No.
Corona.
So,
but
in other words, they survive because weebs exist.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying right now?
Yes, yeah, no, that's literally how they save their economy. It's insane. They put the money into games and anime and all of this stuff.
Oh, man.
and it worked. It worked. It worked too well, to the point that it crippled. You know, it made hikikomori. But anyways, they are trying to fix the tourism because they're planning on handing out like coupons to travel to Japan to foreigners this year whenever the travel bans are lifted to recoup their costs. But right now they're saying they're going to hand those out in maybe September. But
Yeah,
you know, we're going to go back to home inevitably with the corona, and so that's going to get canceled. So like they're just shooting themselves in the foot. I think I really do.
But going back to the whole Olympics thing, because yeah, like you're right, Japan is super heavy reliant on tourism of people. They're just like, yes, Japan, I love Naruto.
Yep.
Yada yada yada. The Olympics are always, you know, have always been just something that's basically just made to drive tourism dollars, and they're not exactly cheap. So just from an optics perspective, you know, having the Olympics pushed back this like yet again and again and again and again is just not a good look.
Mm-hmm. And it's like it's their own fault. Like they're shooting themselves in the foot. This could have been avoided.
They can't. Yeah, because they're not, you know, putting in the exact correct measures that they need to in order to halt the spread of the disease, because they just want to be like, yeah, we don't got any cases here, everything's all right.
Yeah, we're Japan, we're great, we're clean. And another thing, I don't know if it was TBS, but it was getting passed around Japan. It was like, oh, it's because we wash our hands a lot, and particularly because we take our shoes off when we go indoors, so that does not carry the virus. And I was like, yeah,
bruh, that's
that
a high key bro moment. It's all about the shoes.
Yeah, it's the shoes. You see, what they don't want to tell you, what the liberals don't want to tell you, is the coronavirus. It's attracted to your Yeezys.
Yeah,
so when you take
Yeezys
Yeezys
actually
off,
have 5G inside of them. So.
Yeah.
So, and then leaping off of this, I wanted to talk about like my first week back on the job in Japan. So right now, schools everywhere are in session as of a week ago, and usually, well, most of them are. And what a lot of them are doing, especially in Tokyo, is they're having the students come like every other day. They're like staggering the classes, and so there's only half as many people in a room. And then at the end of each day, the teachers will like disinfect the entire room with gloves on and stuff, and it takes them like 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And they're still having like online homeroom and stuff. It's to a point where it's like, why bother? Just stay at home. Like, it's not worth it. But so I was teaching first and second graders last year, but I was lucky and I switched my place, and I am teaching at a middle school now. And with my company, I'm usually teaching at 3 different schools, but with this company right now, I got lucky and they placed me with just this one school. So I'm just at this one Japanese middle school 5 days a week, and I'm not even going to be teaching like more than 4 lessons a day. And it's very relaxed, and the staff is a lot more nice, so it's really cool. They're talking to me in English a lot. They're very helpful, and the kids are pretty heckin' rad. Like, the kids are pretty cool, not gonna lie. because it's
Have you
also
hit them with any fat
right-
JoJo references yet?
Not yet. But the thing to note is that, so I can't say, like, because this is a public podcast, exactly where it is or what school it is, but it is right.
Enough.
It is literally a block away from one of the biggest stations in Tokyo, and like one of the coolest stations in Tokyo, and like one of the biggest streets in Tokyo. So it's like, this is like amazing. Like, I can't believe I got this. And so for my introductory lessons, like, I made a half-hour presentation and I showed all my interests, and I tried to make it so like I came off as someone who did everything, so they can feel comfortable talking to me about any of their hobbies. They don't need to be shy, because it's a very big thing in Japan where like you only do one thing. Like, you do one club, and that's your club. You meet like 5 times a week, all year round.
That is your identity.
And you stay with that in high school, and then you stay with that club in college. That's all you do. And that's sad. That's really sad. So I want to promote, like, hey, I do a bunch of stuff, but I'm awful at all of it. So it's okay.
But you have fun doing it. Like, so who cares?
Yeah. So then after I gave my introduction about myself, I had them stand up one by one and say, hello, my name is blank, and I like blank. And they would go around the room, like, say, like, this is my favorite sport. Oh, so trivia. Did you know that Japanese baseball teams are not named like American baseball teams?
Oh, yeah, I know.
Okay,
yeah,
you
I
know.
don't- I don't know if
don't know
Anthony
about
Anthony,
this.
do you know?
Well, I don't know about this. I've
Okay,
seen
okay.
that like one wacky like
Okay.
baseball video game thing.
I know it
where
works
they like
the same
make
way.
up American names, but
Sorry.
It-
I know it works the same way in Korea, but I'll let you explain.
Yeah. So
the
like,
naming.
so you know how in America sports teams are like locations
Yep.
blank, you know?
Mhm.
basically, essentially,
the
yeah.
Boston
like the Minnesota
name.
Twins or something like that. Yeah.
So that doesn't quite work that way in Japan.
No.
So it's the
Oh,
name of
boy.
their team is the company that owns them name, and then sometimes in small letters the location name. And you could
Yep.
say this is because like they're prefectures or like cities, and they aren't as big of a deal as like states in America. So there's not as much of a geographical emphasis to it. But regardless, this results in situations where like I asked my student, like, what sport do you like? And he said, my favorite sport is baseball. And I said, oh, that's cool. What's your favorite baseball team? And he said, SoftBank. SoftBank is my cell phone carrier. This is the equivalent of going into America and saying, hey, what's your favorite baseball team? You know, AT&T. Like, and I like choked. I was like, I forgot that was a thing. So their logo is the SoftBank Hawks, which and so their logo is literally just the SoftBank logo with a hawk on it. Like, I'll send this image. It's
But
I love capitalism. Man, this is the future.
I was gonna say, I don't think anything quite like summarizes the work culture in Japan quite as well as just how they name their baseball teams.
Yeah, it's so yeah, there's the image. It's literally just the SoftBank logo, but with like a little bird on it. Yeah, like he didn't even bother to say the name of the team beyond SoftBank, and I was like, man, this is the future.
Yeah.
And then then some other students stand up, and one student stood up and they were like, hello, my name is like Shizuka, and I like games. And I'm like, rad, okay, what's your favorite game? And she was like, Undertale. And I was like, what's that? And then, can you spell that? And she's like, yeah, it's Undertale. And I was like, okay. I was not expecting that. And
I mean,
she threw you a curveball there.
the kicker is there has been like 1 or 2 girls in every single class that just loves Undertale.
That's really cool, though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that
I'm
is- that is,
I did
like,
not
super
expect
duper
this
cool.
demographic. Like, I went to the Undertale concert in Tokyo in March, and there was a big turnout, but I didn't expect the demographic to skew that young for like that indie of a game. So it's probably some like popular YouTube Let's Players in Japan played it.
I would almost guarantee that
Or-
it comes down to Let's Players or streamers or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, because that's one thing that I feel like is kind of interesting about this sort of era of gaming that we're in, because so much of game like advertising and whatever is just basically dependent on streamers, and that absolutely has cross-cultural boundaries. So I feel like because of that, that's how games like Undertale or even Minecraft can get big in like all these different markets.
Yeah. And so you'd be surprised at like some of the biggest games that I continually hear are popular in Japan. So obviously Minecraft, Fortnite, and PUBG. But the other pretty big ones are Dead by Daylight and Apex. Those are like the two biggest ones right now.
I think that just kind of proves my point.
Yeah. It's like obviously YouTubers are like promoting it.
Wait, so I have a question, Luke. Is Dragon Quest like big in Japan? Like I know, like I have heard that it is big in Japan, but is it like big with the young people?
Not so this came out like it would have come out like a while ago, so it's like past the wave, and even if it came out on Switch, people probably would have played it by then. So I don't really know, but none of my kids really talk about it. I think one kid said it once. It's definitely overshadowed. Yeah, I think it's mainly like a product of the times where now it's like Minecraft and Battle Royale games are overtaking it.
I do have to wonder though, like, because obviously Japanese gaming has such a important part in gaming culture. I know we just got done talking about nationalism and all that stuff, and now it's bad, but at the same time, I kind of have to wonder, just based on what you're talking about, how the kids' preference in gaming is kind of shifting to these games that would be more, let's just be honest, welcome in Western markets. What could that possibly mean for the future of Japanese video games?
Oh, yeah, like Japanese video games are like already like transforming a lot now. And like, not to mention the younger generation, like both their culture and their ideals are just very like radically different from the last generation in a progressive way. And I think that shows with like compare last generation's Japanese games to this generation. Like
there's
Japan
no contest.
Is really, they're really learning. So it's very, very good that they've changed.
Now, if they could change in some other ways, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But that kind of brings me into one thing I did want to ask you, though, too. Kind of piggybacking off of, progressive youth. Do you see, at least from your perspective, do you see people, like kids in Japan, like take up more progressive political views than generations of the past in terms of, how LGBTQ plus people are treated, minorities, or even, women?
To some extent, but not as much as you would hope. So I haven't been able... So most of the Japanese people my age, or usually a little bit older, that I speak to are not average Japanese people. Just based off of the fact that they're seeking out foreigners to talk to, and they're good at English. Like, when you learn English, that opens your eyes a lot. So they're not the average person. But considering I'm also talking to people my age with the foreigners who come to Japan, and this is what formed my opinion of like America's more progressive than we might realize at first. They make like trans jokes and stuff a lot, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to hang out with you, like, because it's very obvious that they, but with Japanese people, it's hard for me to tell. But I did hear from one of my friends here that they were talking with their Japanese friends going on like 2 years now. And all of a sudden, like a few months ago, they were like hanging out and they're like, ha ha ha, yeah. I don't think I could ever be friends with a gay person. And then my friend was like, what?
It's like, wait, hold up.
It's like,
And that's just a lot of Japanese
where's this bombshell
people.
coming from?
And yeah, they're like in their young 20s. And this is just, a lot of Japanese people still think that.
Okay.
So it's not progressive enough, like, by far. It's definitely better. And like, I talked with I always try to do this as a litmus test with people. I try to bring it up because, I don't want to interact with Japanese people who, believe in that. And I'm going to, I'll tell them off. Like, this is something that crosses cultural boundaries, that like is not specific. And luckily, most of the time they will like agree with me. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Okay. But, I was talking to my head English teacher at my school, who is Japanese, and she's an English teacher, so she's obviously more likely to promote LGBT, and so she did. And so we were talking about my experience with like LGBT in America and like clubs in America and stuff, and how we're making good progress with that. She didn't really mention how Japan views it, but obviously, it's going to take time, but it seems like it is getting better. I mean, if it's any help, like my go-to thing when I meet people, when I'm comfortable with them, is like, hey, I cosplayed as a Love Live character, and then they're like, yo, that's awesome, and I judge their reaction. Where like, if they say, haha, that's so weird, you're so weird, but in like a funny way, then I get a little bit. Then I'm like, oh, haha, thanks. But then, I get, the red flag shows up. But if it's like, oh, that's cool, that's awesome, that's brave, then it's like, okay, that's good.
All right. I like talking to you.
Yeah, so you just kind of need to read the room a little bit in Japan, because it's like being LGBT is seen as a fetish in Japan. That's honestly what it is.
That's a big oof.
And especially to Japanese guys. Like, there's actually a good number of bi people who are women in Japan, but they won't admit it because they get fetishized to death by men. Obviously.
I don't doubt it. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
where it's just like, hey, baby, you want to fulfill my lesbian fantasy?
Yeah. Or like, if they're hanging, like, I've talked to people who are bi, and they'll be hanging out with either another female friend or their girlfriend, and then they're like, oh, sorry, we're bi, if they try to buy them a drink, and they're like, oh, okay, so do you two have sex together? And it's like, oh god, Jesus Christ.
Oof. That's that oof.
Yeah. So but I also can't speak to what the very young generation is thinking now, Gen Z, like my middle schoolers, so could be even more different, who knows. Oh, but I did run into a problem with my last school where I was like doing a joke where I hand them magnets when they put their answer up on the board, and I started to get down on one knee and hand it to them like it's a proposal, or like I'm their butler, and I say, here you go, Princess like Rin or Princess Kaori. And then like a boy will come up, and then I'll kneel down and say, here you go, Princess Ryu. And then the class will laugh, like they'll get a little embarrassed, but it's all good fun. But then after I did that for a month, the teacher like came up to talk to me and complained, like nicely, but she was like, Ruk sensei, I sorry, but can you please not do that? It is sexual harassment, so please don't do that. And I was like, okay,
that's pretty sad. That's
sexual
just, like,
harassment,
fun.
I see, for having fun acting as a different gender. Okay. Yeah, so I have to keep that kind of stuff in mind with Japan. But
yeah,
also, like boys liking female anime, it maybe kind of helps promote that sort of thing more. Like, one of my boys said his favorite anime was Love Live, and then some kids giggled a little bit, and then I was like, oh, me too. And then I like turned to the kids and I was like, you got a problem with me liking Love Live? And they're like, and they were like, no, Teacher Luke. And I'm like, yeah, cool guys like Love Live. And then I high-fived the kid.
Yeah.
That's how we roll.
That's how we roll. Good to see. Because I mean, like, even in the States, granted, I'm sure it's better than Japan, but it's certainly not the case where, you know, speaking from personal experience, where a guy can just be like, yes, I like this traditionally feminine thing.
Yeah.
And people will just immediately be like, yeah, all right, that's cool. I mean,
Japan is a lot cuter, so there's a lot more cute things to like. So,
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've interacted with people where they're just like, yeah, I'm not gonna allow my kid to play with like dolls or anything because I don't want them to be gay. I'm like, that's not how it works, but
yeah. There's multiple reasons why that's wrong, but I will attack none of those and instead just walk.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pretend that didn't happen. But I do want to talk about a few other things before we eventually wrap this up. Because I recently found something that I think it's so like it's really hidden that nostalgia factor for me, because I am the older man here. You know, I guess I'm going to be 28.
Oh wow!
There is this
website not to make you feel old, Taylor, but you are definitely the old person here.
Well, yeah, I know I am. Okay.
Okay, Grandpa.
Okay. Listen here.
That just means you have tons of wisdom. You are wise, and you can instruct us.
Tell me about the Reagan era.
Force.
But there's this website that's called my90stv.com. And
is this a new website, or has this been around for a while?
I honestly don't know.
I feel like I've heard of it.
But it's this website, and I'll send you guys the link to this. It's this website where you basically just kind of get to peer into different decades of television. Because even though it's called My 90s TV, you can look at TV from like the 70s and the 80s, and there's different like channels, and you can sort by stuff by like year too. So you can look at stuff that came out in like 1995 specifically, and there's I'll paste it in here. There's different categories too. So you can be like, yeah, I just want to look at news stories from like 1993, or I just want to look at advertisements. Like there's so much stuff on there, and it's kind of funny because technically speaking, because even though it's essentially just getting all these videos off of YouTube, there's actually technically no pause button, because they try to make it seem like you're watching
awesome.
actually TV. So the only way you can actually pause something, quote unquote, is by turning the TV off by pressing the power button on the TV and then turning it back on again.
Does it hold its same place?
Yes. It does.
Man, I love these kind of like... I love all of these like websites that are dedicated to one specific thing of like media like this. Like I like the... I think it's like you can listen to like certain radio in certain states, and then like listen to like the rain, like all of that kind of stuff is just like so nice. I love it.
Well, for me especially, because I mean, obviously I don't have a strong like memory of the early 90s or like the 80s when I wasn't even born yet. But to me it's just kind of fascinating looking at all that stuff, because it's like you're getting like a direct window into like the culture of that time. Like it's not necessarily some like romanticized version of it. It's just like this is stuff that came out during this time. This is how it was presented. This is how
you don't just get the good episodes of something. You get like the bad.
You get the
too.
garbage. Like
yeah, that's 90s garbage is my favorite garbage.
Like when I was using this earlier, I think it was earlier today. I stumbled across one of the music channels, and if somebody's romanticizing like music from the 90s, they might be talking about like Nirvana or like Alice in Chains or something. But no, like I got some Limp Bizkit knockoff rap rock thing. I'm like, yep, this is how I know this is real.
That's so great, because I hate any argument of like, well, I mean,
I was born in the wrong generation.
But obviously, of like this decade being better than the other. Like,
But you'll always have those people that are just like, I was born in the wrong generation. I'm like, really? You sure about that?
So I think I don't like the generation that I was born in, because I prefer the modern generation. Like, I'm the opposite. Like, I'm very happy of the modern decade. Like, I didn't really like the 90s or the aughts very much. I very much loved the quote unquote more millennial time of social media and YouTube and influencers and stuff. I like that. That's pretty rad.
Mm-hmm. I mean, kind of speaking from personal experience, like coming from someone that is bi, I experienced a lot of homophobia, like a lot of homophobia, especially in my small town growing up in the 2000s. And now I'm just like, I'm looking at it, I'm just like, I can't even imagine like what it would feel like to grow up like in this current generation where all this stuff is so much more accepted than what it was before.
And not go ahead.
No, because like,
okay,
I was just out in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, and I was at this school, and like, I mean, like, this place was just out in the middle of nowhere. Like, it was one school for like there's like one school for like the entire county pretty much. And I saw 2 trans kids talking with their friends and stuff out in the middle of nowhere, like in this super rural area, and everyone was cool with them and talking with them and stuff. And I know I wouldn't have experienced something like that growing up. I know I wouldn't have in my school.
Yeah, and not to this isn't like saying, and now here's my side of it, but like, and as a straight person, I also experienced a lot of homophobia directed to me in elementary school. So like, that's saying something. Like, as a straight person, even, because the whole like, oh, you're gay insult, like, that was just a huge thing. And like, people were like, hey, Luke's gay in elementary school, and I'm like, I don't really even understand why. Like I did like maybe like one joke once, and then that just became the thing everyone said. So like, it's just the entire like, and I love how nice everyone is. Well, not everyone, but we're so much nicer as a culture now. It's like, I feel like I don't have to like man up about like someone insulting me, or like even like when I was younger, like kids would be like more hands-on and like push each other and stuff, like and like sometimes like just hit each other because like that they're friends and they greet each other. But like, I never liked any of that. I did not like any roughhousing, and that made me feel like very like just kind of constantly a little bit on edge around like even my friends, and like, oh, they're gonna insult me sometimes, but like, that's how it goes. But
remember when the insult remember when the insult, you do so and so like a girl, was like super commonplace?
I mean, it kind of still is, like, at least a little bit.
It's been like 20 years since I heard that. Jeez.
Wait, Luke, you have to have heard someone say, "Oh, you throw like a girl," more recently than like
20 years ago.
In the past
I just haven't thought of that, like, because when that I have heard that, like, it's only been in like maybe media, and it just kind of like glosses over. Like, I've never consciously thought about it for like 20 years.
But you're not gonna hear that at all now.
Yeah.
And for good, it's good. That should have never been a thing to begin with.
Well, at least in America. So
at least in America. I don't know about Japan, but
so one of the foreigners that I was hanging out with in a group, we went to a maid cafe. Okay, I can explain that part, but I won't for the sake of the story. So we're at a maid cafe, and the maid comes over and she's like, I can draw a picture in your coffee with the syrup. And I'm like, oh, cool.
It's like the Instagram thing.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, because maid cafes actually aren't that bad. Like, they're kind of disappointing. I wish they were worse. But they're genuinely like, they're just kind of cute. Like, it's, like, it's a genuinely cute pancake. And I'm like, okay, I can't make fun of this. And they're like, what would you like me to draw, Master Luke? And I'm like, oh, she called me Master Luke. And then I was like, I can't come up with anything, so can you draw you? Like, You, my maid? And she's like, me? Okay, sure. And then the foreigner next to me, who's I think from like Brazil or France, was like, you're asking her to draw herself? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, that's pretty gay, man. And
Wait,
then I'm
what?
just like,
What?
yeah, I was like,
What?
I was like, and so
What?
I just said, yeah, I know. And then he's like, you said you know, you don't even care, man, you're cool. But I was just like, is this really a thing that still happens in other countries? I guess it is.
Yeah.
So that's so sad. Like, I was so caught off guard. I was like, are we really back a decade? Like, are we that... Is America the only one that's that forward? Like, that's so depressing.
I'm getting like flashbacks of high school when people would just, attach like that's gay to just the most arbitrary things.
But I love that we're... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say there was a kid that I guess he ate at our table, and this is when I knew not to listen to any of his opinions. He said, "Oh, the Beatles are gay." I'm like, the stupidest thing I've heard of.
Oh.
Yeah, that's probably the stupidest thing I've heard of in like this year.
I, on the contrary, though, I'm very happy that it is coming back, and now we are arbitrarily saying things are gay. Like, we've come full circle.
It's like,
be gay, do crimes.
Like, to the point where it's not like really like that much of a insult. It's just like, this thing is gay, and you're just like, yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, it is.
You're correct.
Yeah. Or like,
you are correct.
When you're with friends and like you're very like progressive, and like you can joke and say like,
right,
man, I don't know, that's pretty gay.
And you're just like, hell yeah,
obviously like playing the antagonist. Yeah. So funny story in college. One of my friends kept calling my friend like, that's pretty gay, like as a joke. It was very obvious we were all progressive, and he was like, hey, let's call him Joe. So he's like, hey Joe, you're pretty gay. And he'd always be like, yeah, I am. And this went on for 2 years. And then one night they were together, and Joe was like saying, yeah, I have a date tomorrow. Oh, where did you meet him? Oh, I met him on Grindr. And he's like, what? You're gay? And he's like, yeah, I've been telling you I'm gay for the past 2 years. You kept saying it. I thought you knew.
That's pretty great.
Like, I never lied to you.
It's like this. You're saying this is gay. I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, I don't know what you expect.
Yeah.
I literally told you, man.
Yeah.
Gay
I
is
told
cool.
I told you just weren't listening. Like it's kind of bizarre. I mean, in a good way, but it's just kind of bizarre for me, just kind of looking back and seeing how much things have changed.
Mm-hmm. I'm so happy for like the modern generation growing up. Like, it's must be so much more comfortable.
It must be, because I know it for sure was not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Happy Pride Month.
Yeah.
I guess happy isn't really quite the way I'm feeling right about now with the current state of the world, but it is what
at
it
least
is.
We can at least be happy that this is going to be, like, if nothing else, the most likely turning point for like some more major reform, because everyone
Hopefully.
doesn't seem like they're slowing down until
Hopefully.
actual something happens. Yeah, hopefully. So hope it does not slow down.
But change of subject here, because I just suddenly reminded myself of this when I was talking about that really, really bad like Limp Bizkit like 90s thing I saw on the website. There apparently, back when like the Dreamcast came out, there was this promotion with Limp Bizkit in the Dreamcast where
that's why it died.
What?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly don't think it helped save the Dreamcast, that's for sure. But no, apparently there was like this contest where like you could call into like, you know, a certain radio station like in an area where like Limp Bizkit was like touring, and if you, I don't know, were one of the lucky callers or whatever, because that's how they did things back then, then you would have the chance to play, I think it was like Unreal Tournament or something on the Dreamcast, like like at the concert, like versus one of the members of Limp Bizkit, like, and it would be broadcast to the entire, like, it would be broadcast like on the stage, so like everyone could watch you play.
Everyone could watch you suck at a
What if
video
you
game,
win?
just like
What
I
happens
always
if you
wanted.
You
You get to take over Limp Bizkit.
get a free.
You are Limp Bizkit.
You get a Sega Dreamcast Limp Bizkit T-shirt. I don't know, but like
It's like the Avatar. It gets passed down. You are the new Limp Bizkit.
yeah, I guess. But I think it was also they were doing it to somehow promote SegaNet.
Yeah, that was a thing.
Yeah,
That
it was a thing. And in the ad I saw, because it was like a magazine ad that someone had like scanned, you know, onto their computer. It's like there was a quote from Fred Durst that said, "If someone's kicking your ass online, it's probably me on the other end." I'm like, oh my god. Oh no. Oh, I'm glad that I'm glad the publicly just like the public just like collectively decided to forget about that particular era of 90s music. I mean,
Well, Limp Bizkit might make a small resurgence because, slight spoiler alert, there is a stand-in the next part of JoJo that is called Limp Bizkit.
don't tell me that.
So within small circles, Limp Bizkit might be making a comeback.
Listen,
So
like,
does that mean that Araki is a big fan of Limp Bizkit?
Quite possibly.
listen, if like your generation starts listening to Limp Bizkit unironically because of JoJo, I'm gonna go like full boomer and be like, kids these days, they don't know anything.
Hey, by the way, Anthony,
They grew
if
up
you
wrong.
ever, Anthony, if you ever wrong me, if you ever wrong me, I can go to Araki's house. I can end JoJo. This is not a threat. I'm saying it is a possibility of me to accidentally cough through my mask after I contract corona.
No, see, that's not how you pass corona. That's when you forget to take your shoes off when you're in someone's house. That's how you pass it.
I can say,
remember the shoes.
Araki, do you have a pen? And then he'll just instantly die. So, you know, I've been using it as a threat as one of my friends whenever he annoys me.
It's just like, I'm gonna say this right in front
Yeah.
of your face, and then you're gonna die instantly.
Oh no, I mean he's a big JoJo fan, so I'm just
okay.
I can kill Araki like whenever I want. I can take one for the team. I know where he lives.
I am the god here. I have all the power.
But who would want to kill that nice man?
I don't know.
It's his birthday.
I mean,
It's his
He
birthday.
does like Limp Bizkit.
Tomorrow.
What? Oh, it's his birthday?
It's Araki's birthday on the 7th of June.
Oh, happy birthday! It's June 7th right now.
Well, in your world, yes.
Yeah. Is he doing anything for his birthday?
I don't think he has a Twitter account, so I have no idea.
Okay.
He's still stuck in like the late 90s. He doesn't even know social media exists.
What decade is the current JoJo?
2010s.
When does it take place?
2011.
2011?
2011.
Okay. We're getting there. Can't wait for
Slash maybe
JoJo
2012.
Stan's
I'm not sure.
COVID-19.
that do you really think that that's a
Wait,
genuine
no.
possibility?
Well, they kind of already had one that it would have basically be the coronavirus. So isn't that
Yeah,
just
Purple Haze.
Yeah.
Purple Haze.
So never mind.
And of course, it's a Jimi Hendrix reference.
Yeah,
'cause I
there's
guess why not?
genuinely
Yeah,
probably
so-
a stand for everything at this point. Also, hasn't
Part-
Araki forgotten that some stands exist, and he has reused stand names twice?
Yeah, so in one Part 6 stand, he wanted to call it Earth, Wind, and Fire, not realizing that he used that for a Part 4 ability. So he changed that to the Part 6 one to Planet Waves.
Okay. I mean,
Which
Araki
is-
forgets.
By the way, one of my favorite Part 6 fights. I won't say what it's about, but that Planet Waves, one of the best.
in his defense, coming from me, someone that knows nothing about JoJo except from what I've heard over the internet, there's a lot of this just seems like really complicated, dumb garbage, but in a good way. So
Yeah,
to me,
absolutely.
it seems,
That's what
it seems
JoJo
like it'd be
is.
very easy
Yep.
to forget what ridiculous things you've already written into
Yeah,
your story.
yeah. JoJo is what people who don't watch anime think anime is,
Yeah.
except it actually is that.
Yeah,
and it
but
doesn't
it's
take
like
itself
that in the
seriously
best
most
way
of the time.
possible. In
Like-
the absolute best way
Yeah.
possible.
Who can
Like-
forget at the end of the rock paper scissors arc it being solved by Deus Ex Machina of Invisible Baby? One of
That's-
my favorite episodes.
That seems like quite the stretch.
It's true.
Not gonna lie.
That actually happens.
It actually happens.
And then there's a stand called the Notorious B.I.G. And his stand ability
okay.
is he has to die for his stand ability to get activated, which is oh man.
Okay. All right.
I mean, one of
That's,
the more recent stands is called Doggy Style after the Snoop Dogg album.
Yeah. And then Soft and Wet.
Yep, Soft and Wet is the stand of the main character in Part 8.
I think there's
JoJo knows
fireworks
what's
going off outside. Are we gonna get an Outcast AT Aliens one too? Why not?
Is there not
There's
already?
none that I know of, although I'm not exactly a music person, so a decent amount of the music references fly over my head.
Okay,
Same.
that's fair.
And a lot of them are they have to change their names if you're watching certain subs, like on Crunchyroll.
Yeah, but
For legal reasons.
I've read all of the manga, and since it was a fan scanlated thing, they use the actual names and not the quote unquote translated stuff. So I have seen all of the names or what they should be for all of the parts.
That JoJo Battle Royale game's okay.
There's a
That's kind of all I have to say.
There's a JoJo Battle Royale game.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
released
it's only in Japanese
in
arcades,
March.
unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah. It's called JoJo. What is it called? I forget what it's called, but I just know it's not
I can
called
look it up real
JoJo's
quick.
Bizarre Adventure Last Stand, which is the biggest crime in the world.
Wait. Why is it the biggest crime in the world?
Because it's a battle royale game, and Last Stand,
Yeah.
the last stand
Oh.
alive,
Yeah,
I don't
it's even
know
worse
why it's
because
not.
the actual name of it is called Last Survivor.
Yeah, oh,
So
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
they're already so close.
Yeah,
Last
like-
naming it
Survivor?
Last
It's
Stand.
so lame. Yeah, the game's okay. It's kind of dumb because
It doesn't
you can
look
pick
that
the
fun.
same. You can pick the same character as someone else, and it's also a max of I think 15 people. It's not
Oh,
100. So
Okay. So
yeah, it's not what
Well,
I
I
would
I mean,
want.
we aren't going to get an actual good JoJo game until Arc System Works makes a JoJo game. And that's
the
just
Capcom
facts.
one on the Street Fighter 3 engine's pretty good.
I was about to
But-
suggest though.
But that's old.
I was about to suggest though because I've recently started playing Yakuza 0. It's my first Yakuza game, and it is incredibly dumb, and I love it. And I kind of started looking into what was it, the Fist of the North Star Yakuza
Yeah.
reskin, and from what I heard, that was okay, but at the same time, I just kind of appreciate it just for existing, and I feel like game, like a similar game in the style, but with JoJo, could possibly be fun. I don't know.
Yeah, I would
I
still
don't know.
prefer just a JoJo fighting game. So the hard thing about an accurate JoJo video game is that it's more basically just like Sherlock Holmes than it is just a straight up like shonen
Okay.
of like trying to figure out, like in the same sense that My Hero Academia has like a lot of moments where it's like it's not about the pure force, it's about using your brain to win the fights and be creative with your stands.
Except,
So,
I like My Hero Academia, but none of the fights in My Hero are anywhere close to, like,
No, but,
as fun
like,
or as imaginative
yeah.
as, like, some of the weakest
But,
stuff
like,
in JoJo.
But like My Hero Academia is like sort that brand of shonen that kind of goes in that angle. A lot more modern shonen is doing that kind of thing. Demon Slayer does that like a tiny bit. That's just kind of like the general what shonen nowadays is trying to go for, and I prefer it. But no one does it as good as JoJo because like it's just insane. So translating that to a video game is like really hard because it's about the mind games, and the closest thing to that is just fighting games. You know.
I mean,
So-
that's why I
Isn't
think
there
that
already-
fighting games is the best genre for it.
Isn't there actually already a JoJo fighting game?
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
kind of, but it's
several,
not very good.
None of them are like amazing, except for the Capcom one, which was made in the Street Fighter 3 engine in the 90s. That one's genuinely pretty good. It's just old. So
I mean, so like there are 8 parts of JoJo, 8 separate story arcs, and that fighting game only has ones from the characters from the first 3, which is just like that's not enough.
So it's missing a lot of potential stuff, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that the actual hardest thing for making a JoJo fighting game is like actually putting together all of the powers. Since if you want to have like a complete like representation of JoJo, you have to adapt 3 different power systems into the game, because you have Hamon, which is from parts 1 and 2, Stands, which is from parts 3 through 8, and then the Spin, which is in part 7.
yeah, I really don't think it would be that hard to do though. Like, you know, like Arc System Works literally in like BlazBlue, like every single character has its own separate system. Like it's.
I mean, yeah,
totally
and like
possible.
Arc System Work has basically done Stands already, since they made Persona 4
it's
Arena.
literally the same. Like personas are literally stands. That's where they got the idea from. So it should not be hard for them to do. It's a matter of just like, you know, doing
of
it.
actually doing it.
So after the Dragon Ball craze, I hope they jump on JoJo. That's my pipe dream.
I don't see why not. I mean, it seems like probably like one of the arguably one of those popular franchises out there at the moment. Seems like a giant wasted opportunity not to capitalize on it.
Yeah, and yet they did Grand Blue Fantasy, but I guess that's also a huge market as well, just not in America.
I think that
so
is. I think
Nope.
that
I guess
is
that makes sense.
pretty big.
Yeah, Grand Blue's not exactly popular over in the West.
Mm-hmm. I can't get into any kind of gacha or mobile game like that. It's just beyond me.
Not even Fate
No.
Go.
Same. Oh, boy.
All right. Is there anything else we want to cover in this episode?
Well, I think I'm about spent. I just really wanted to talk about Fred Durst in the 90s a little bit.
That's fair. That's fair.
Luke, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, particularly one thing that happened this past week that I'm sure we have all seen is the Trackmania debacle. Are we all aware of this?
I am not actually.
Okay, Anthony, are you?
I don't believe so.
I just want to ask though. Are you You said Trackmania, right?
Yes, Trackmania.
Are you talking about like the video game franchise?
Yes.
Oh no, I actually like those games. What happened?
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, you can
but-
say it. You can say it. You can
Okay.
say it.
So, I want to find the exact quote here. Because this is... Okay. So, this is the headline. Ubisoft says Trackmania is not subscription-based. Okay? You just pay for it multiple times.
But
Here is a quote from the article. Actually, it's not a subscription model, but an access to the game for a limited time. You pay for having access to the game for one period, and that's it, a Ubisoft rep said. When the time is over, you simply have to buy the game again for the time that you want to access it again.
But
So it's not a subscription. You just buy it for a limited time.
That's a subscription, idiots.
See,
like that.
The fascinating thing about this is that they're saying this in a way that's like trying to placate people, but this only makes it sound worse. Subscription sounds better than having to buy it multiple times. I have no idea how few people hands this passed through. It's the hottest mess in video games right now that is not related to BLM. It's fantastic.
I'm just dumbfounded. That's how many PR departments did that have to go through?
0.
It's like, oh no, it's not a subscription model. It's just literally what a subscription model is.
They saw the culling and they were like, wait a second. We can do better. I think it's like $10 or $20 to own it for a month or a few months or something.
What?
Yeah, so you don't have to pay for full price for like a normal game. You just buy it for a limited time.
What the heck?
I mean, I as much as I'm against it, I can't exactly say that I'm strongly against that because I pay like $15 a month to play Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah, but this is
so my hands are kind of tied on that.
Trackmania. It's not an MMO.
It's not a live service game. It's Trackmania.
It's
also,
just...
so you can play for free the like a certain number of like tracks, but then so it's basically just a demo, and then you pay for the full version, and then you get to unlock your tracks and stuff and like create tracks, but then you don't have access to that again until you renew your subscription. I'm sorry, you buy the game again.
This is why piracy is a thing.
Yeah. Man, this is a very dark time for this because then other publishers are going to look at this and salivate, being like, wait a second. We can make people pay 5 times for our EA Sports game? Oh my god. This is...
They're just going to be like, how come we weren't doing this before? We've already screwed them in every other way.
Yeah. Some people are defensive. Of course.
They're defending this?
Yeah, because they're like, well, think about it. If you compare it to a movie, like a movie, you pay for the ticket once, and then you see it once. And this game is like $10, and you get access to it for a month. So, like, you know, it's a better deal.
Okay. So, a couple of things. First off, the last entry in the Trackmania series, which I bought for my Xbox, it's about $20. And I got access to all the features, all the tracks, and this was $20 brand new. Like it was never a $60 game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not expensive games.
No, they're not. And then you're comparing like a cost to value ratio, okay? So $10 for a Trackmania game, which probably has the same amount of content, I'm just going to assume. You could, if you have like an Xbox or a PC, $10 or $15 gets you access to Game Pass, which is literally just hundreds of other video games.
So I have the prices here. So starter access is free. It includes free quarterly campaign, solo and multiplayer racing, 25 tracks, test out each other's tracks in arcade mode, and more.
Okay.
So it seems like a gimped free to play. And then standard access is $10 for a year. So $10 a year. Okay, I was wrong. Includes all starter access content.
It's for a year?
Track of the day option, full access to track editors, daily competitions, and more. But then club access is the one above that. That's $30 a year, or $60 for 3 years. This includes all starter and standard access content, plus clubs, exclusive content, skin customization, special campaigns, online rooms, exclusive training tracks, competitions. So the full version of the game is $30 a year. Yeah, so that is the full game.
Okay. See, like, theoretically, this wouldn't be that bad of an idea if you also had the option to just buy it normally.
Well, yeah, but it's $30 a year. That's already, like, more expensive than the last Trackmania, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Like, and also, so they're saying they have no plans of adding a lifetime option, because they'll still continue to support
that right there
as long
is the
as
real
people
problem.
will still subscribe to it. So it seems like, but that creates a bad precedent where it's like, now it sounds like they're not going to commit.
I just really don't
see as many people. So don't even buy the $60 one for 3 years, because who knows if it's going to be around for 3 years. I'm
having a hard time kind of like articulating what I want to say here. It just seems kind of mind-boggling to me that this is the business model that they're going with, because yeah, from like what you were saying, this seems like it should have been a free-to-play game. And it's not like that there aren't like a bajillion other games out there that are using like pretty much the same exact business model as a lot of other big free-to-play games like Apex and, I don't know, Fortnite or whatever. I don't understand why you have to go about it and be like, yes, no, you have to have like this amount of like paid tiers in order to access this content. Like, just make it available to everyone. I don't understand. Like, this has been proven to work before, but now they're just
like it's like out of nowhere too. Like,
yeah,
I just don't understand it. There's no way that this is gonna make it to release with the amount of like uproar about it. But also, this could be getting like overshadowed with like current like world events. So maybe not.
Who knows? But hey, you know, if you're curious about trying Trackmania Turbo, that's the last one.
Yeah,
it's not
I played
too
a
bad.
little bit of Trackmania. Yeah, very fun games. It's we're not getting F-Zero, so
yeah, we're not. We're not getting F-Zero. Probably never Wipeout again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we just kind of have to take it.
Mm-hmm.
But does anyone have anything else that they want to add?
Not that I can think of.
I'm sorry, what?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, so we've gone over quite a bit of stuff in this pretty beefy length of a podcast here. So if, you know, you've listened to all of this and, you know, you've decided that, you know, that we're worth listening to, thank you for spending your time with us. And, yeah, hope to see you next time. And, adios.